Hey everybody, so we're looking here at a PDF document that's been uploaded to the federal government Freedom of Information Act request website, the FOIA website. And we've got a email highlighted here, as you can see. Let me just do a little bit better job of highlighting that, because we've got the previous email there. Now you can see here, it says, this is from Denitra Senegar. That's who it's from. This is to Hillary Clinton. Important for context. And then it says, well, you can read it there. Can you see what it says? I mean, requesting documents pertaining to the resurrection chamber of Gilgamesh, the location of his body, and the location of the buried Nephilim, or Nephilim, depending on where you grew up and went to school. Well, this is very interesting, isn't it? Requesting documents pertaining to the resurrection chamber of Gilgamesh, the location of his body, and the location of the buried Nephilim. Wow. Let's talk about this for a little bit. We've been exploring the Nephilim, the Anunnaki, for quite some time now, since January of 2018, almost 3 years. And I think now it's time that we take this a little more seriously than we have been. It's been fun to kind of talk about it. For a long time, when I started to uncover this information, I started to highly suspect that the reason for the invasion of Iraq had far more to do with what they were going to find in the Baghdad Museum, which is where they first went. I mean, I remember as a long, long time ago watching the invasion take place. CNN was covering it. Back then, CNN was actually a decent news network. Now it's just a propaganda network. But CNN was on the ground with their cameras, with a satellite connection, rolling live. And we all remember, well, I do anyway, the Iraqi information minister, there's no American troops here. We're going to destroy them in the sand, and Iraq will stand. And he was made quite fun of around the world, right? There were T-shirts you could buy with his face on it. He became quite a character. And yet, one of the very first images that we saw was not troops in the streets patrolling, but it was securing the Baghdad Museum. And I can see it right now in my mind. I can see the American troops wearing their sand-colored gear, walking through the aisles of the museum, walking past glass display cases, securing the Baghdad Museum. And at the time, I didn't think anything of it at all. I had no context. And now, as we look back, I should find those images. I'm sure they're available somewhere. Now, as we find emails like this sent by this woman, Denitra Senegar, to Hillary Clinton, talking about the resurrection chamber of Gilgamesh, the location of his body. The Iraq war was 1 month, 4 weeks after archaeologists had discovered the grave of Gilgamesh. And the location of the buried Nephilim. The location of the buried Nephilim. Now, modern Christians don't know what the early church fathers knew about the Nephilim. If you talk to a modern Christian, they will say that the Greek and the Roman pantheon of gods, like Zeus and Jupiter and Poseidon and Neptune and Kronos and Saturn, just to name off the three main characters of each pantheon, is just mythology. And Christians will say, well, it's just false gods. The early church fathers knew a lot better. And I learned this, it's funny because sometimes when I talk, including just less than a couple of hours ago, somebody said, man, you really need to look at what Chuck Missler talks about. A lot of the dots that I've been able to connect have been because of Chuck Missler. I've been a student of Chuck Missler my whole life. So Chuck Missler was the one that informed me that the early church fathers knew that the Greek and the Roman pantheons of gods were not mythological as modern Christians think at all, but they were actually the Nephilim mentioned in Genesis chapter 6. Right? And so here we have in this email sent to Hillary Rodham Clinton by Denitra Senegar with this. Unfortunately, we don't have the email, which is really a shame, but we do have the subject line, which is mind-blowing, highly informative, and telling just in and of itself. By golly, I would have loved to have, and maybe we will still get access to the body of this particular email. I just think this is incredible. Requesting documents pertaining to the resurrection chamber of Gilgamesh, the location of his body, and the location of the buried Nephilim. So, there is a lot of very interesting things going on, and we've been talking about this for almost 3 years, and, it's just kind of interesting, and I'm sure some of you are just like, yeah, well, I like watching you, listening to you, talking about it, but it doesn't have any real practical day-to-day use. Well, now it does, because here we have the former Secretary of State, former presidential nominee for the Democrat Party. I mean, we all know who she is. Talking or receiving an email requesting documents pertaining to these incredible things. And so now, now it starts to come into light why John Podesta, the sicko, has such an interest in UFOs and all of this kind of thing. Why Hillary Clinton has gone on the record, said many times on camera, she would disclose UFO information. Why we're seeing right now, even the last couple of weeks, UFO sightings are going back up. We're seeing some pretty amazing UFO sightings all around the world right now, as in the last few days and weeks. And here we have this document that was found earlier today. Wow. Holy cow. So now this is not just some mythological thing that we're dealing with, but an actual thing that we're dealing with, something that's quite real. These Nephilim are real. They are the gods. They are the people that made us. I encourage you to go to andersondiscoveries.com and work out the answer to the question. Yes, we talk about the answer to the question now. We're not keeping it a secret. But you need to go through the work, though, so that you understand for your own self what it's all about and why it's credible, and to start to understand the story. So Christians like to say the Nephilim are just these fallen angels. Well, it doesn't say that in the text, actually. That's just a Christian belief that's come across over time. Nephilim is just another word for Anunnaki. Some Nephilim are good, some Nephilim are bad. They're just like humans. They're just like people. Remember Genesis 1:26. Then the Elohim, the council of the Anunnaki, or as Psalm 82 actually has it in the ESV, the divine council said, let us, plural, make man in our plural image, in our plural likeness. And that's what they're talking about here in this email. So Gilgamesh was a hybrid. He was a half Anunnaki, half human. And he wasn't fully Anunnaki, but they can interbreed, just as Genesis chapter 6, verse 4 states that they can interbreed, right? That they saw the daughters of men, that they were beautiful, and they procreated with them. And so we are made quite literally, as Genesis 1:26 says, in their image and likeness. We're so similar to them, it's not funny. Remember what it says later in Genesis chapter 2, the snake says to Eve, well, Yahweh knows that in the day you eat the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil, your eyes will be opened and you'll be like Yahweh. And that happened. And then later in Genesis chapter 3, the story continues, and Yahweh actually says to the others, the Elohim, the divine council, the council of the Anunnaki, they have become like us. So because they now know good and evil, because they have consciousness, self-awareness. So we're going to have to step things up a little bit here, I think, or I know. And we're going to have to start talking far more about this. And over the last few days, great things have been happening. Far more people have been sharing my content. People have really liked the 2 gardens and a snake video. And so we're going to have to produce more content, explain more and more, because it's quite clear that we are in these real last days. Now let's talk a little bit about, just briefly, I don't want to be here all night long. Well, we've been here 13 minutes already. So let's take maybe a maximum of 10 minutes here and kind of give you a bit of an overview of what's actually happened, because you can share this video around. Well, I didn't spell check it. Did I get everything right? Looks like it. That's good. So it's important that if this is the only video you watch, you get some little background here. So don't hit stop and get rid of this video. Keep watching it here for a few minutes. And some of this will be, especially if you're a Christian, will sound completely crazy, but actually it's all based on real empirical evidence. And we can see here from the emails here, yeah, now it's real. This is the former Secretary of State. We all know who Hillary Clinton is. And here's an email being sent to her requesting documents pertaining to the resurrection chamber of Gilgamesh. And you really need to read the Epic of Gilgamesh now. The location of his body. We have his body here on Earth. We have it on planet, which is absolutely profound. And the location of the buried Nephilim. How many are there? These are dead Anunnakis that are here on the earth, right? So let's kind of start back in the beginning. We won't take too long here, but let's go back 450,000 years ago. And this will sound like a bit of science fiction to you, and you might want to just tune out because it sounds too crazy. Well, I just really recommend you listen, because you're going to start to hear a lot about this. And there's going to be an awful lot of deception that's going to start to come forward. I mean, we're already seeing it. Thank God people that fell for the virus hoax are now starting to wake up to what's really going on. Right? A virus is no more lethal than the average flu. All the death counts have been radically over-exaggerated by multiple factors of 10 and 20 times. And we're starting to see the shutdown of society, and we're starting to see these certain players that want to brand humans and number us all and keep us in line and track us electronically. And things are starting to get very ugly out there, and it's starting to look biblical. It's starting to look like, wait, doesn't the Bible talk about some of this stuff? And it does. Now, I'm not a Christian. I'm a former Christian. I've done the stuff. I've planted churches. But I do love Jesus. I do love Yeshua. So let's go back 450,000 years ago, and let's share a little bit of a story that will sound completely crazy, but you've just got to trust me for a few minutes and listen and take this in. And perhaps you won't think think this is realistic right now, but you're going to start to hear it from other sources too. And you're going to start to be deceived. So listen, please listen. I know it's going to sound a little crazy. 450,000 years ago, approximately 450 to 455,000 years ago, the Anunnaki, the Nephilim, came to Earth. Now, they've been around a long, long time. This wasn't the first time they had come to this planet, right? And they decided that they wanted to mine the Earth for minerals. And so they went through a bit of an ecosystem transformation, getting it livable. They spent some time cleaning the waters, and they put the dinosaurs here. They started to terraform the planet. They wanted it to be livable so they could come and live on the surface. And they did that, and they started to mine it for minerals. Now, at first, there was a landing party of just 50 of them. They landed in the Middle East, in the water of the Middle East, in a UFO. I know it sounds a little crazy. Just bear with me. And we see these Tic Tacs now that the U.S. military has filmed off the coast of San Diego and off the East Coast as well. These Tic Tac UFOs that are able to just zip down into the water, right? This new documentary released just a couple of days ago called The Phenomenon. I really recommend you watch that. Some very good information. Some people say, well, it's misinformation. Sure, there'll be some misinformation in there, but there's also a lot of good content, and there's some very reputable people that are speaking that you should listen to, especially the pilot that has become quite famous now, that, you know, who's seen these things with his own eyes and tracked them and chased after them and these kinds of things, right? So the UFOs can go into the water just like they can through the atmosphere. It's really not that much of a difference in matter for them, right? They landed in the water, they came ashore, and they started building infrastructure. And one of the reasons they chose that area was because of the ready availability of petroleum products that were already just bubbling up to the surface. They wanted a simple source of energy. So they used that, and one of the leader of this mission of 50 that first came, his name is Enki Ea. Enki Ea. Enki means Lord of the Water, and Ea, E-A, is his name. Well, they came here, and he's the one that terraformed the planet and got everything ready, and he's a scientist and an engineer, and he terraformed the planet, made it habitable. They landed and started building infrastructure, and then many, many, many of them came and stayed here, hundreds of thousands of them, and they built camps all over the planet in different locations. And we have all of those locations, you know, not every single one of them, but many of them we know about them to this day, right? And thanks to ground penetrating radar and LiDAR, we're finding more and more of them all the time. Well, this leader of this landing party, Enki Ea, is also the person that Christians know as Jesus, Yeshua HaMashiach, Yeshua by Yosef. He was the first person here. He was the one that created all the life and everything that is here, vegetation, all flora and fauna. He's a master of DNA. I know this sounds like a crazy science fiction story, but this isn't speculation. We have an enormous amount of evidence of all this. It's just that most people are completely unaware of it. And that's why you want to make sure you hang around, follow me on wherever you're watching this, as we continue to produce more and more content with a level head to get this information out to people. And people say, well, this is all crazy. Yeah, it is, until we get these emails being sent to Hillary Clinton requesting documents pertaining to the resurrection chamber of Gilgamesh, the location of his body, and the location of the buried Anunnaki, Nephilim. So it's no longer some conspiracy theory. It's no longer some wacky story that people are speculating about from the past. No, not anymore. This is real life. This is real life. Okay? I really recommend that you get onto YouTube and watch a lot of Chuck Missler's material, a lot of the things that Chuck Missler is very open when he talks about these weird things about the Nephilim and all kinds of crazy stuff that he has no explanation for. He will say often, I have no explanation for it. Well, I've been able to resolve some of those things. So people like to kind of criticize me sometimes, say, you need to listen to Chuck Missler. Yes, well, Chuck Missler is how I found a lot of these things, actually. If I had not have been a student of Chuck Missler, I wouldn't have been able to crack a lot of these things that I have. So yes, everybody should be listening to Chuck Missler. You can find him on YouTube. So, after a while, they'd been here a long time. They're mining minerals all over the earth. There started to be some kind of schisms between certain groups. They didn't like the labor. They didn't think that they were going to be here for so long. And there were kind of skirmishes and uprisings that were threatening to turn into war. And so the Elohim met together and said, what do we do about this? And they decided what we'll do is we'll let all of them go back and we'll create a primitive worker to do all the work for us. And it was Enki Ea, Jesus, Yeshua, who had the suggestion, we can create a primitive worker, and they did. And this was approximately 132,000 years ago. And the first workers were the African, the black man, and he was created to mine minerals in Africa. Nothing has changed, has it? Still is the way it is to this very day. The structures that they created all down both of the southern coasts of Africa have just recently been discovered. Pilots had known about them for some time. They had flown over them. They could see the structures from the air. And now other archaeologists are down there right now documenting all of these structures that go all the way down one side of the coast of Africa and all the way up the other side. And these are probably the very first and oldest, obviously, human structures on planet Earth, built by what we know today as the African. Well, more building projects and mining projects were taking place all over the planet. Food was needed, and so certain groups of people were raised to do agricultural work. And so different groups of human beings were made for different locales. People didn't evolve from the African to other types. Each type that we see was created in situ, in place, where their blood type, their digestive systems, their skin type, their eyes, their facial structure, everything was designed specifically for where they were going to live, the foods they were going to eat, the foods that would grow there, etc. And that's why we see this incredible acclimatization of different human groups all around the world. And we used to think that everybody came from one ancestor from Africa, and it was a good assumption. But now, as we've learned more and more about DNA, we know that's not the case. And we can see there are separate groups of humans that have arisen spontaneously, and that's correct. They created us in these little pockets of groups all around the world. So at this time, Yeshua, Jesus, was Lord of the earth. He was running the whole show. Let's see, there's probably a whole lot we should skip out and just kind of jump forward to today. What should we miss out here? There's so much we could talk about. There was a transfer of leadership around the time of the deluge. Now we know from great work by people like Graham Hancock and others that the deluge, the biblical flood, was a real event. And now even academia is slowly warming up to that fact. More and more academics are agreeing that yes, around 11,600 years ago, there was a near global flood. And it was probably caused by massive tsunamis that swept over entire continents. And of course, that would have caused massive amounts of evaporation, which would have caused torrential rainstorms for a long, long, long time before it eventually all settled back into the oceans. And that's where we get all the sedimentary layers that are all over the planet that have concealed most areas. Not all, which is good. Not all, but many, right? At that time, there was a change in leadership, and leadership moved from Yeshua over to another one of the Anunnaki, and his name is Enlil-Nunamnir, and you might know him better as Yahweh. And so Yahweh took over control of the planet, and we can actually see that transition occur in Genesis 2, chapter 2, verse 4, where the name for God changes from Elohim, right, the council, to Elohim Yahweh, council member Yahweh. I know some of you that might be students of the Bible might be scratching your head right now and going, wait, what? I've never heard this. It's time to go look at it and read it, right? You can see just in a Strong's Concordance, you can see the transition. Yahweh wasn't used before Genesis chapter 2, verse 4, and then Yahweh retells the creation story from his perspective. So Yahweh then took over lordship, governorship of the earth. All right? He basically pulled rank. Yahweh was the second in charge of the Elohim, of the Anunnaki divine council. Right? Start to ring some bells. You remember how Satan was the second most powerful being, but he wanted everything for himself. Yes, and you can watch my study, Two Gardens and a Snake, and we'll go into more detail there on what happened. So Yahweh raised up this people that we know today as Israel, and zooming forward to 2020, here we find ourselves in this incredible position where in October 11 of 2020, we're finding this email that was sent to Hillary Rodham Clinton talking about Gilgamesh, who's talked about in the ancient texts, in the Epic of Gilgamesh particularly, but not just that text. I mean, we have carvings of Gilgamesh, the very, very popular and famous person in antiquity. And people would like to say, well, he's just a fictional character, but read what's staring you in the face on the screen there. No, he's not. No, he's not. No, Gilgamesh was a hybrid. He's half Anunnaki and half human. I think actually he's 1/3 Anunnaki and 2/3 human, or the other way around. I can't remember off the top of my head. But he's not full human. He's not full Anunnaki. Now we know this, if you're a Christian, you know from Genesis chapter 6, verse 4, 5, 6, 7, that these hybrids were real. It's right there in the Bible, right? And we've got a study as well. We haven't done it for a long time that shows all of the different texts that talk about these giants in the Bible. And there's many of them. Most people just aren't aware of them. So here we have in 2020, well, this email was sent in December of 2018. Now, Hillary Clinton wasn't Secretary of State here. What's going on? Right? What's going on? Now, I don't know why we have her emails from 2018. These must have been sent on a government server. Right? I don't know why she still had access, but often government workers, especially of that caliber, retain their security clearances, and they continue to use, because they're used as contractors and all kinds of things for a long, long time usually, right? And so maybe that's why we have this email. But this email is authentic. It's on the web. You're looking right now at the government website. You can see here up in the URL, it's just slightly concealed, but it does say here FOIA or FOIA.state.gov, right? This is totally official, totally official. So what's going on right now? Well, I wanted to keep this short, but boy, it's so much content to go through. So what's happening right now? Some very strange things are about to occur. Donald Trump's involved, Hillary Clinton, John Podesta, lots of people on both the left and the right and otherwise are involved. Trump's involvement, you can see that we're going to have a peace agreement with Israel soon. Now you say, well, we already have two. Yes, and there's going to be more, and Trump has said there's going to be more. We are specifically looking for a peace treaty that will be for a 7-year period, a specific 7-year period. We don't have that yet. We will, maybe by the end of this year. I would say most definitely by the end of next year. At the present time that we record this video, it looks pretty clear Donald Trump is going to win re-election, right? It doesn't look like he's going to lose any state that he won in 2016, and it looks like he's going to pick up an additional 2 or 3 states. So, Trump is probably going to win. He's going to have more peace treaties that are connected with Israel, and we're eventually going to find one of these peace treaties is a 7-year peace treaty, and it's that treaty that's going to have some details in it about Israel rebuilding the temple. Now, Israel wants to rebuild the temple on the Temple Mount itself. Now, of course, the Arab world right now would not agree to that at all. They would say, no, you can just bugger off, right? The Al-Aqsa Mosque is on the Temple Mount. But, you know, I'm a little bit of a historian. I know some of the history of the Temple Mount and what has happened there. Right now we have the Dome of the Rock. Jupiter's temple used to be there. So when the Jewish temple was destroyed, Jupiter came along and built his temple right over the top of the former Jewish temple, the second temple. First temple was Solomon's temple, right? And we had the second temple was destroyed in 70 AD. I think it was 146 or 110, where Jupiter built his temple over the top of the Jewish temple, right? Why is that so significant? Why am I telling you that? Because Jupiter is Yahweh. Jupiter is a Nephilim. He's an Anunnaki. It was Chuck Missler who was the first to tell me that the Greek and Roman pantheon of gods were not mythological at all, but were the Nephilim talked about in the Bible. Well, Zeus in Greek mythology and Jupiter in Roman mythology are the exact same individual. Most people that have looked at mythology and, you know, especially Greek and Roman pantheons can see, my gosh, they look the same. They're almost the same character. They are the same character, right? Zeus and Jupiter are exactly the same character. But Zeus and Jupiter is also Yahweh. I know some of you won't believe that, and that's okay, but you just have to look into this stuff, right? I don't want you to believe anything I'm saying. Just go, well, isn't that interesting? And go and investigate it. And we'll be talking a lot more about this in the future, as we have been for quite some time now. And then you've also got, remember Enki Ea, Lord of the Water? Well, who's the Lord of the Water in the Greek pantheon? That would be Poseidon, right? Who was the Lord of the Water in the Roman pantheon? Well, that would be Neptune, right? Yes. So you've got Enki Ea is also Poseidon and is also Neptune. And these same families of Nephilim have been running this planet for a long, long time. Well, here's where it gets even really shocking. If Yahweh is Zeus and Jupiter, who then is Neptune and Poseidon? That would be Yeshua. That would be Jesus. I know some of you now say, oh, you've lost me. Well, you're just going to have to dig in and learn more about this, because as you can see from this email again, this is the real world now. This isn't some crazy mythological nonsense. These are emails being shared with Hillary Clinton. Right? So Yahweh's temple actually wasn't Yahweh's temple. It was actually the Father's temple, right? Yeshua's father's temple, first in the Solomon temple and the second in the second Jewish temple, right, was still dedicated to the Father, not to Yahweh, right? Now we're going to get a 7-year peace treaty, and Israel's going to rebuild the temple, most likely on the Temple Mount. Now, you think, well, how's that going to work out? I don't know. And maybe it won't be exactly on the Temple Mount. Maybe it'll be right beside it. There are 3 different possibilities. The number 1 is, well, we want to build it on the Temple Mount. That's probably unlikely to happen in all truth, right? They would have to probably demolish the Dome of the Rock. Now, there is some space over to the right of the Al-Aqsa Mosque. And can they build it right next to the Al-Aqsa Mosque? Well, I mean, boy, that must be some peace treaty, right? I guess that's why it'll only be a 7-year peace treaty, and maybe that's what's going to happen. Now, when we listen to what Yeshua said, and we listen to what we find in Daniel 7, we see that they rebuild the temple and they resume animal and grain sacrifices, and they do it for 1,290 days, right? 3.5 years, 3.5 years. And then for some reason, the text doesn't tell us, they stop. And once it stops, what does Daniel tell us will happen? It tells us that the abomination of desolation will stand in the most holy place. The same thing Yeshua repeated, right? He quoted from Daniel and said, when you see the abomination of desolation standing in the most holy place, then you know all of these things. And he'd just been talking about all the things that would occur right imminently up to the very second before his return. He said, when you see the abomination of desolation standing in the most holy place, all of these things are about to occur, right? So, how close are we to all of this happening? Weeks, months? It won't take them more than 60 days to build the temple. It's a very basic structure. There's nothing really to it. They'll have it already prefabricated off-site. They'll truck it in and assemble it. Right, so it'll take them no more than 60 days, and they'll be very efficient at it because, man, they're chomping at the bit to rebuild the temple. Then they'll have an opening ceremony, and they will resume these animal and grain sacrifices. And then for some reason, after 3.5 years, they'll stop. And then the abomination of desolation, the beast of Revelation 13, will come physically so that you and I can see. CNN will be there with their cameras, and the whole world will see this abomination of desolation stand in the most holy place, this temple that is supposed to be to God. But here's the thing, Yahweh's not God. Yahweh is the beast in Revelation, and you can watch my talk, 2 Gardens and a Snake, to see that. I know that sounds blasphemous if you're a Christian. Yahweh is not God. He's the one who set himself up as God. He's the one who's going to stand in the temple. He's the one that's going to say, I am God. Right? We see in Revelation 13, Yeshua describes the beast. He gives 4 descriptive terms. I'll let you look it up yourself, right? In Revelation 13. And then you want to cross-reference that with Hosea 13, where Yahweh describes himself. And you'll see that Yeshua is clearly describing Yahweh. There's no 2 ways about it. Right? And then also in the Old Testament, in 1 Samuel and 2 Chronicles, we have the census that was taken of Israel, and we see in one book where it says Yahweh numbered Israel, and then we see in the other book Satan numbered Israel. Yahweh is not God. Yahweh is the one who set himself up as God. Yahweh is the one who had his people kill Yeshua and crucify him on a cross. Yeshua destroyed the works of the enemy by completing the law. Okay, I know this sounds completely contradictory to Christianity, and it is. I want you to look more into it. Okay, you don't have to go, oh, I disagree with that. Don't even make a decision in your mind like that. Just go, that's so interesting, I want to learn more. Okay, we'll put a link in the description here to my talk, 2 Gardens and a Snake. So, Yahweh, the beast, the abomination of desolation, comes and stands in the most holy place, the temple that is supposed to be to Yeshua's Father. And then what happens? Well, then you see that most Christians know about the 7-year period of tribulation. Well, that's divided into 2 lots of 3.5 years. The first 3.5 years where they're doing these animal sacrifices. Then the abomination of desolation comes, makes his appearance, physical appearance in the temple, and starts this new period of 3.5 years. 7-year peace treaty, 7-year period of tribulation. Everything is connected here. And although this sounds like, oh, this is just some religious mumbo-jumbo nonsense, take a look around you. Take a look at the email before you right now. No. No, I don't. I'm not a Christian. I don't believe in Christianity. I think Christianity is the creation of Yahweh. He made himself God in Christianity, same as he did in Judaism. We could get far more into the details of how he took the children of Israel out of Egypt and how Yeshua had them there intentionally. They were being looked after in Egypt. Yahweh comes along and steals them out of Egypt, and there's a whole big story that, it's all in your Bible, but Christianity has flipped the script and told you a very different thing to what you'll actually read in the text. So go read it. You've got to become familiar with the Bible. And now what are we going to see? 3.5 years have passed. Yahweh has made his physical appearance. He's going to introduce the second beast. So you look at the description of the second beast. The second beast looks like a lamb. Oh, looks like a lamb. The second beast looks like a lamb, like Yeshua. So you've got a fake father and son event going on, and a lot of people are going to fall for this. So you've got to be really, really careful, right? Most Christians are going to go, unless you share this video with them, and they start to, probably they'll think this is nonsense the first time they hear it, but a seed has to be planted, and then they'll start to see more and more things. They'll start to question what they think they know is true. Yahweh is going to be in the temple, and they're going to go, wow, here's God. Wow, this is incredible. And then he's going to introduce the second beast that looks like a lamb, looks like Jesus. And it's the second beast that makes everybody worship the first beast. It's the second beast that tells everybody, now you must be branded. And if you're not branded, you can't transact, you can't buy, you can't sell, you can't participate in society. You join a new monetary system or you're screwed. Right? Unless you live in the sticks and you're completely living off the land, you won't have internet access anymore because your account will be linked to your brand, and your internet provider will cut you off. Doesn't mean you got SpaceX, so I got like Starlink, doesn't matter. Every transaction, how are you going to pay? How are you going to pay for Starlink? You won't have the brand. You won't have the mark. So the second beast is going to force everybody to get the mark of the first beast. Right? These are just going to be people to us. Real life, living, breathing people that you can eyeball, you can see on TV, and people will be sharing their videos in the whole bit. It's not going to be some weird, crazy, wacky stuff. Just going to be people. People, right? And then it says that an alien invasion will occur, and the Christian world has been convinced that a fake alien invasion is coming, and they're going to champion Donald Trump and his Space Force, or whoever's president at the time, as all the militaries of the world come together to repel this alien invasion that Christians are going to think is just fake. But it's not fake. It's the return of Jesus. It's the return of Yeshua. Read it in your Bible. It sounds like an alien invasion. Of course, that's exactly what it is. I mean, they're not from Earth. They are technically extraterrestrials. They are aliens. Some Christians don't like me using that term, but I mean, that's what they are. They weren't here. Yeshua, in his conversation with Pilate, made it clear, my kingdom is not of this world. My kingdom is not of this world. Right? So Yeshua is going to break in. He's going to return with his Father, and there's going to be the last final battle over the freedom of all of humanity, you and I and all of us. This real Nephilim, Anunnaki, Poseidon, Neptune, Yeshua HaMashiach, Enki Ea, are going to come and free humanity, fulfilled the law, dealt with the law 2,000 years ago, and now is coming to deal with the lawgiver. A very different story than you've heard, I understand. But it really is in your Bible, and I really encourage you, don't just criticize me. You've got to start to read the text. So radically important. So, this email just blew me away. What do you do with something like this? We're on the cusp. I would say that we're, no more than probably 9 years, maybe 8 years, away from the final events that are going to take place on this planet. I'm quite serious. I know I might sound like a bit of a nut right now. I'm self-aware. I can hear myself talking. But when you see things like this, it kind of just makes it real, doesn't it? This is not a joke anymore. This is real life. We are the creation of an alien species, the Anunnaki, who are just like us. They're a little bit taller than us. They're stronger than us. They're far more intelligent than we are. But they look very much like human beings. We see them carved and engraved into, stone all over the planet. I really encourage you, watch my talk, my study, Two Gardens and a Snake. It will be linked below. So now, I don't care. I don't want you to be a religious person. I'm not a religious person, right? I consider myself more of a scientist. I want to know what's real. But this is not some weird mythology. Well, it is weird, that's for sure. But it's not mythological. It's not make-believe. This is the answer to us. So where we came from, sometimes a Christian will go, oh, that sounds so crazy. Have you considered the Christian story for a moment? That sounds equally crazy, right? They came here, they created us, they put us all over the planet, all of these ancient megastructures that we continually find all over the planet, incredible things like Angkor Wat in Cambodia, all the massive complexes we find in South America, the incredible structures we find in China, the stuff that we continue to find day after day. Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, which looks to be right on the edge of what the Bible describes as the Garden of Eden. It's right on the perimeter of the exact location the Bible gives of the Garden of Eden. Göbekli Tepe. It's considered now the oldest structure that's been found on the planet. Well, it's not really, but it's certainly very old. Right? This is all real life now. Over the next few years, we're going to see. Now, somebody asked, is Trump the Antichrist? Look, Trump is certainly a very interesting figure, and we want to pay attention to him. And it's logical to vote for a man that seems to be standing up against all of the tyranny, all these people that want to introduce a global communist state and enslave us all. I can't answer the question. I just keep paying attention, right? Certainly he's very interesting. Certainly he's got a lot of similarities to the Anunnaki. He's a builder. He likes to build things, and huge things. The bigger the better. He has a fascination with gold. He loves young women. That's a real common trait of the Anunnaki. He seems to have a way that he can manipulate humans incredibly easily, right? He always seems to win in the end. It's like he just knows how to do things so perfectly. And at first, everybody will criticize him. Oh, look, he's screwing up here. And then a few weeks or months down the road, or even a couple of years down the road, you go, oh, wow, he was right all along. He really has an uncommon wisdom, a very likable figure to some that aren't interested in being a slave to a global communist state. I get the appeal. I've promoted Trump quite a lot. Is he the Antichrist? Everything is possible. Certainly, he's the one that's interacting, although Jared Kushner is doing a lot as well, to create these peace treaties. So we just have to wait and see. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. Everything that's going to happen is going to happen no matter what anyway, all right? There's nothing we can do about it. And, I'm not an American citizen. I'm just a permanent resident, so I can't vote. And if I could, I'd vote for Donald Trump. But keep your eye on him, for sure. All right, keep your eye on him. So, what now? Read your Bible. If you don't have one, get one. I sell them for $16. I sell this Bible here for $16. It's a great little Bible. It's very discreet. It's nice greeny, two-tone greeny color. I also have a brown leather one with a gold gilded edge. If you want a fancier looking one, they're both $16 shipped to your door. I don't have many left. Really important to start reading. You can go to my website, free Bible audiobook, and download to your phone. You need to download it to your computer first and then transfer it over to your phone. And you can listen for free, no cost. You can listen. Modern translation, the God's Word translation, really good modern translation of the Bible, completely free. All right. It's offered courtesy of the God's Word to the Nations Bible Society. It's not a cult translation or not a wacky translation or anything like that. Very mainstream translation. You'll find it on Bible Hub and all the other Bible websites. All right. Learn what the Bible says. You can't just have your favorite 10 or 20 verses. You need to read it over and over and over again. And let me give you, before we go, the way I teach people how to learn about Yeshua, because there's nothing more important. You know, Yeshua said that my children recognize my voice. My children recognize my voice. And I teach people how to learn about Yeshua this way, and I recommend it to you right now. You want to start in the Gospel of John. This is in the New Testament. It's not hard to find, right? There's 4 Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And I want you to read them all, but I want you to start in the Gospel of John because it's the most important one. If you only read one of them, well, then start with the most important one. And I'm going to put a screenshot below that you can save to your phone with these questions on it, okay? You're going to read the text with 5 questions in mind. What did Yeshua say about himself? What did Yeshua say about his Father? What did Yeshua say he came to do? What did Yeshua say about where he came from? And what did Yeshua say would happen in the near future? Okay? I'll put those in a screenshot below so you can save it to your phone. So come back in a few minutes if you're watching this live. I see there's a whole bunch of you here live. I can't do it now. But just come back in a few minutes and you'll be able to save the image to your phone with those 5 questions, okay? It's really important that you understand this is not about a religious thing. This is not Christian. I'm not a Christian. I left Christianity behind because my understanding of the text showed me that Christianity was created by Yahweh to conceal who Yeshua is from us. That's why I focus on him. That's why I'm getting you to learn about him. Not telling you to learn some doctrine. All of those are generic questions. And you will learn so much about Yeshua, it will blow your mind. All right? So please do that. Don't just go, oh, yeah, that sounds interesting. No, please do it. Because the greatest deception humanity has, if you think this whole freaking COVID-19 thing was a great deception, you ain't seen nothing yet. Look how many people fell for that. Almost everybody. More than 80% of people, probably closer to 90% of people fell for that. A lot of people still think it's a real thing. 200,000 people died, Israel. No, they did not. Turn your freaking TV off. It's complete nonsense. No, 200,000 people did not die of COVID-19. It's not even the CDC website states that. It's complete nonsense. So, if you fell for that, well, you're easily going to fall for what's going to come because, man, when you see this figure, this person who's able to do all kinds of signs and wonders, and everybody starts to worship them as God, and then the second beast comes along and says, you have to worship them as God, and you better receive his mark on your hand, or you can't do anything. You can't catch a flight. You can't buy food for your children. You can't send your children to school. You can't pay your bills online. You can't do anything because you don't have the mark. We can all see the infrastructure that's already in place to support this. It's not like some high-tech thing. Oh, yeah, you're talking about something in the future. No, it's all around us already. You just got to turn it on, right? So, I mean, all your phones scan the QR code these days. It's just going to be a similar thing. So, the greatest deception mankind has ever seen is about to come upon us, and you need to be ready for that. And the only way I can get you ready for that is that you learn the voice of Yeshua. Do you understand? There is nothing more important than that. So I'm going to say goodbye. Been a very interesting day to learn about this email. Again, if you're just joining us, like, what are we talking about? What's on the screen here? We're talking about this email that Denitra Senegar sent to Hillary Rodham Clinton. And it says, requesting documents pertaining to the resurrection chamber of Gilgamesh, the location of his body, and the location of the buried Nephilim. And if you joined us after we got started, I recommend you go back and immediately start watching from the beginning. Okay? Thank you so much. We're going to do more and more videos now because we're going to have to, because this is now present day reality. So thank you for joining me. I appreciate it. Please, before you go, give me a thumbs up and tag somebody in the video that you think should watch this. Share it to them. Send it in a private message to them. Share it to groups that you think might be interested in this material, Christian groups, anything you think is relevant. You can follow me on YouTube. I'll put in the description of this video, once it's done, places where you can follow me and you can get on my mailing list. Stay in touch. Thanks for watching. Have a wonderful night. May the Lord bless you and keep you, and make his face to shine upon you and give you peace. Shalom. Have a wonderful, wonderful night. Take care. Bye-bye.